Hello, beautiful soul. Today, I invite you to begin a gentle yet powerful journey. A journey inward, not to escape the world, but to rise above its noise. The title of this talk is Learn to Act as If Nothing Bothers You and Reclaim Your Peace. And I want to begin with a truth. Nothing outside of you has power unless you give it permission. We have been taught to react, to fight, to prove, to defend. But my dear, what if I told you that you have the power to choose a different way? Let's begin by exploring the power of your inner dialogue. Every thought you think is shaping your life. If you say, "They make me so angry," you are handing them the keys to your emotional well-being. But if you say, "I choose peace no matter what's happening around me," then you begin to reclaim your inner space. Now let us look at control. So many of us try to manage everything, people's opinions, their actions, their energy. But trying to control others is like trying to hold water in your hands. It slips right through. Peace blossoms when we release the need to control and instead choose to flow. We are not talking about disconnecting from life or people. We are learning the art of sacred detachment. You can still love, you can still care, but you do not need to carry every emotion someone throws at you. You are not a sponge for negativity, you are a beacon of light, and your peace is a sacred space worth protecting. This is where affirmations become your allies. Try saying this to yourself daily. Sparkling heart, I am safe, I am calm, I choose peace. Sparkling heart, nothing and no one can disturb the calm peace of my soul. These are not just words, they are seeds. The more you plant them, the more they grow into strong, healing beliefs. Remember this, everything is a mirror. When someone triggers you, ask, what within me needs love right now? Often, what bothers us in others is simply reflecting something unhealed within. This is not judgment, it is opportunity. A loving universe giving us a chance to grow. Lastly, let's talk about daily practice. You don't brush your teeth once and expect lifelong dental health. The same goes for your peace. You must choose it daily through meditation, affirmations, setting boundaries, and forgiving yourself and others. So, my dear, learn to act not in pretense, but in powerful intention. Act as if nothing bothers you, because you are the guardian of your peace, because you are learning that your soul matters more than being right, because you are choosing love, because you are choosing you. And as you walk through life with calm eyes and an open heart, you teach the world not by preaching, but by being. So go forth and reclaim your peace. The power of inner dialogue, what we say to ourselves, becomes our reality. Changing our thoughts is the first step to emotional freedom. Let's begin with something so simple, yet so often overlooked. The way we talk to ourselves. You see, most people move through life never questioning the voice in their head. They assume it's just how they are. But I want to invite you to look a little closer. That voice, that ongoing narrative in your mind is not fixed. It is not the truth. It is simply a habit of thought, one that was shaped by your upbringing, your environment, and your past experiences. And here's where your power begins. Once you recognize that your inner dialogue is learned, you also realize it can be unlearned. You can begin to choose a new language for your inner world. This is not wishful thinking, it is deep psychological reconditioning. Every thought you repeat becomes a belief. And every belief shapes your emotions, your decisions, and ultimately your life. Think of your mind like a garden. For years, you may have been planting seeds of doubt, fear, and worry, sometimes because that's what others planted before you. But now you're being called to become a conscious gardener, to pull up the weeds of criticism and replant with the language of compassion and strength. This is not ignoring reality. It's creating a new internal reality so that you can respond to life with clarity instead of reacting with chaos. Let's look at the philosophy behind this. The Stoics spoke of how our interpretation of events, not the events themselves, determine our peace. Marcus Aurelius said, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it." Thousands of years later, psychology confirms this. Cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, is built on the understanding that it's not the situation, but our thoughts about the situation that shape our emotions. And yet, most people never pause to examine what they are telling themselves when something upsets them. So here's a question I want you to begin asking. What am I telling myself right now? When someone speaks harshly to you, do you immediately think, "They're right, I'm not good enough"? Or "I can't believe they did that to me"? Do you spiral into resentment, or do you center yourself and say, "This doesn't define me"? These choices, these inner sentences, seem small, but they are not. They are the architecture of your inner peace or your inner war. Now, this is not about suppression. It's not about pretending nothing affects you. Rather, it's about acknowledging your feelings while choosing a more empowered story. When you act as if nothing bothers you, you're not denying life. You're choosing to rewrite the script your mind defaults to. You're saying, "Yes, I see this challenge, and still I choose to speak to myself with love. I choose to respond, not react. I choose to be calm in the eye of the storm." And when you start to practice this, not once, not twice, but daily, you'll find something miraculous begins to unfold. The things that once triggered you begin to lose their grip. The voices of doubt get quieter, and in their place, a new voice emerges, your own unconditioned, empowered voice. A voice that says, "I am enough, I am safe, I am not the chaos around me, I am the calm within." So if you take just one step today, let it be this: become aware of your inner dialogue. Listen not with judgment but with curiosity, and then begin gently, deliberately to choose better words. Words that lift, words that heal, words that remind you who you really are. Because the quality of your life will never rise above the quality of the conversation you're having with yourself. Releasing the need to control others. Peace begins when we stop trying to control situations and people. Let's talk about one of the greatest sources of human suffering, the need to control others. Whether we recognize it or not, so much of our inner tension stems from our attempts to mold people into who we think they should be, to bend situations into what we believe they must become. And yet, time and time again, life resists our grip, because people are not here to obey our expectations, and life is not here to follow our scripts. Now I want to be clear. Wanting harmony in our relationships or clarity in our goals is natural. It's human. But when our desire turns into demand, when it hardens into "it has to be this way," we start to suffer, because what we're really saying is, "I cannot feel okay unless they change, unless this changes," and in doing so, we hand our peace over to people and events we cannot control. So, what do? Do we resign ourselves to chaos? No. But we begin to understand deeply that control is an illusion rooted in fear. The moment we try to control others, we're often trying to soothe an anxiety within ourselves. We want to feel safe. We want to avoid pain. We want certainty. But control is a poor substitute for true security, because as long as your peace depends on what someone else does or doesn't do, you are not free. This is where the teachings of spiritual masters and psychological pioneers converge. In Buddhism, there's the concept of non-attachment, not because we don't care, but because clinging creates suffering. In modern psychology, we speak of differentiation of self, the ability to maintain your identity and emotional balance even when others around you are in turmoil. Both speak to the same truth. Real strength is the ability to remain centered while the world around you is in motion. Let's bring this into practical terms. The art of detachment, not disconnection. We can care deeply without absorbing negative energy. Boundaries are a form of self-love. Let's move a little deeper now into the subtle but essential distinction between detachment and disconnection. This is a place where many people misunderstand the path to inner peace. They assume that if they're to be unaffected by what bothers them, they must shut down emotionally, become distant, cold, unavailable. But that's not peace, that's emotional exile, and it leaves the heart dry, the soul weary. What we're learning instead is the art of sacred detachment. It's the quiet strength of being fully present in life without being consumed by its noise. It's the capacity to stay open-hearted and engaged without surrendering your center. Detachment, when practiced with wisdom, is not about indifference. It's about inner independence. When you're truly detached, you can hold space for another person's pain without absorbing it. You can listen without needing to fix. You can observe without needing to react. This doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care deeply, but wisely. It means you understand that your energy, your peace, is a sacred resource. And just as you wouldn't hand your house keys to every stranger on the street, you stop handing over your emotional well-being to every passing opinion, crisis, or conflict. This idea has ancient roots. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna teaches that we must act in the world without attachment to the outcomes. Why? Because outcomes are unpredictable, people are unpredictable. If your peace depends on how things turn out, you'll always be at the mercy of things you can't control. But when your peace is rooted in how you show up, your intention, your presence, your integrity, then no one and nothing can truly disturb it. Now, let's bring it back to the psychological level. Boundaries, emotional, energetic, even conversational, are how we practice this detachment in daily life. A boundary is not a wall, it's a gate, and you decide what you allow in. You get to choose what energy you engage with, what stories you believe, what chaos you absorb. This choice is the cornerstone of personal responsibility. Here's the truth. People will behave how they behave. Life will unfold the way it unfolds. And while you may influence those things, you cannot control them. But you can control how you show up. You can choose presence over panic, response over reaction, grace over grasping. Detachment lets you stay rooted in that choice. It lets you remain the calm center, even as the world whirls around you. And this isn't a one-time achievement, it's a practice. It's noticing when you're beginning to absorb someone else's stress. It's catching the moment you start taking on a responsibility that isn't yours. It's reminding yourself that empathy does not require entanglement. Love does not require losing yourself. This is where maturity lives, in the space between your care for others and your care for yourself. In that space, you begin to act as if nothing bothers you, not because you're numb, but because you are deeply anchored. Because you are connected not to the drama of the moment, but to something higher, to your own wisdom. to your own peace, and that connection cannot be severed unless you allow it. So here's what I invite you to take with you. Detachment is not stepping away from love. It is stepping fully into love with boundaries, with clarity, with strength. Because when you no longer abandon yourself for the comfort of others, you finally become a place of true peace, not just for yourself, but for the world around you. Affirmations as anchors of peace. Repeating loving affirmations trains the mind to respond, not react. Let's take a moment now to explore something deceptively simple yet incredibly powerful, the use of affirmations. At first glance, repeating phrases like "I am at peace" or "I am safe" might seem like little more than wishful thinking. But I want to invite you to see affirmations not as empty mantras, but as psychological anchors, tools for reshaping the mind and reconditioning the nervous system. The truth is, your mind is constantly affirming something. Most of the time, without your awareness, it's reinforcing fear, self-doubt, and limitation. You spill your coffee, and the thought arrives almost automatically. I can't do anything right. Someone criticizes you, and you hear yourself say, "Of course they're upset. I'm not good enough." These are affirmations too, just the unconscious kind. Left unexamined, they form the blueprint of your inner life. They teach your body how to feel, your voice how to speak, and your choices how to unfold. Now, imagine if you could begin to consciously author that blueprint. That's what affirmations allow you to do. You aren't trying to lie to yourself. You're trying to speak a new truth, one that may be unfamiliar at first, but that points to the deeper reality of who you truly are beneath the layers of conditioning. From a psychological standpoint, affirmations help you interrupt habitual thought patterns, and neuroscience supports this. The brain is plastic, capable of rewiring itself based on the thoughts you think and the emotions you repeat. When you say, "I choose peace in this moment," even if the situation is chaotic, you are beginning to signal to your nervous system that it is safe to settle, that it doesn't have to react the way it always has. You're giving yourself permission to respond from a new level of awareness. Let me be clear, affirmations are not magic spells. You don't say "I am calm" once and suddenly feel serene. But like watering a seed, the power is in the repetition. Every time you say, "I am worthy," even when you don't feel it, especially when you don't feel it, you're choosing to stand on a different ground. You're saying, "I will no longer let my unworthiness be the voice that runs my life." And this connects back to our earlier reflections on detachment and inner dialogue. Affirmations are a bridge between where you are and where you're becoming. They help you stay rooted when the winds of life try to pull you into fear, into shame, into self-abandonment. They allow you to act as if nothing bothers you, not because nothing ever will, but because your inner stability is no longer dictated by outer circumstances. This is how we reclaim our power. We become mindful of the language we use with ourselves. We begin to build a vocabulary of strength, of compassion, of quiet assurance. And over time, this inner language becomes our reality. It becomes the calm that walks into every room before we do. So what should you affirm? Start with what your heart longs to hear. I am safe. I am enough. I release what I cannot control. I trust myself. I return to peace. And say them not as desperate hopes, but as sacred declarations, reminders to your body and mind of what is possible. And when you forget, because you will begin again, that too is part of the practice. Each time you return, each time you speak your truth out loud, You're building a new path within yourself, one that leads not to fear, but to freedom. Because in a world that constantly tries to tell you who you're not, the most radical thing you can do is speak aloud who you truly are. And believe it until the belief becomes unshakable. Everything is a mirror. People and experiences reflect our beliefs. If we shift the belief, the reflection changes. Now let's talk about something we often resist but desperately need: stillness. Not inactivity, not idleness, but the kind of intentional stillness that reconnects us with our center. In a world that constantly urges you to move faster, do more, and fix everything immediately, stillness can feel like a threat. Like you're falling behind, but in truth it's the most profound kind of power, because only in stillness can we hear what truly matters. When life feels like it's spinning out of control, most people speed up. They react impulsively, speak without clarity, try to solve from a place of inner chaos. And the result is often more damage, more confusion, more exhaustion. But there is a different path, and it requires courage. The courage to pause, to breathe, to not respond right away, to sit with the discomfort long enough to understand it before doing something about it. This is not inaction. This is conscious restraint. It's the difference between reacting from fear and responding from wisdom. Psychologically, this practice interrupts the automatic loop of stimulus and response. Neurologically, when you create space, even a few seconds of mindful awareness, you deactivate the fight or flight centers in the brain and activate your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for decision, making, compassion, and foresight. What you're doing in essence is teaching yourself to be still without being stuck. You're learning to be the observer of your experience rather than a prisoner of it. You can feel the anger rise and not speak from it. You can sense the anxiety tighten your chest and not act on it. You allow the emotion to pass through, but you remain anchored in the awareness behind it. And that awareness, that still point within you, is always available. You just have to practice returning to it. In Eastern philosophy, this inner stillness is often called the witness. It is the part of you that sees without judgment, without panic. It doesn't rush to conclusions. It doesn't need to prove anything. It simply observes. And when you begin to live from that space, when you make decisions from that stillness, your life changes. You stop leaking energy into battles that don't matter. You stop being dragged into drama that doesn't belong to you. You begin to respond with calm, with clarity, with quiet strength. And this isn't just a spiritual idea, it's deeply practical. When something upsets you and you pause instead of reacting, you give yourself time to reflect. Is this really about me? Is this worth my peace? What would I do if I wasn't afraid? These questions can't be answered in the noise. They require stillness, not so you can escape life, but so you can return to it with more wisdom. Stillness also reveals what is real. In the quiet, you begin to see which worries are projections, which problems are not yours to solve, which patterns are calling for healing. You start to hear your own voice again, not the conditioned voice of fear, but the deeper voice of intuition, of knowing, of peace. And it is from this stillness that we learn to act as if nothing bothers us, not because we're numb, but because we're no longer reactive. We are deliberate, we are calm. We've reclaimed the space between the trigger and the choice, and in that space we've found our freedom. So the next time you feel the urge to react, stop. breathe, be still. Let the moment pass through you without becoming you, because in that pause lies your greatest power, the power to choose peace, even when chaos knocks at your door. Now we arrive at something both simple and profoundly difficult for many people, learning to walk away. Not from love, not from kindness, but from what consistently robs you of your peace. You see, there's a quiet kind of wisdom in knowing when something no longer aligns with your growth, and the strength it takes to release it without guilt, apology, or resentment is often the very thing that liberates you. We live in a culture that romanticizes endurance. We're praised for staying, for fixing, for trying harder, even when our well-being is the price we pay. But sometimes the most courageous act is not to stay and try again, but to say, "This is no longer serving me, and I give myself permission to go." And I want to be clear, this is not about giving up quickly or avoiding discomfort. Growth requires discomfort. But there is a difference between temporary discomfort that leads to healing and chronic disturbance that drains your spirit. One teaches you, the other diminishes you. Walking away is not a failure, it's a form of alignment. It's an affirmation of your worth, your energy, your time. When you continually stay in places or with people that dishonor your boundaries, you send a subtle but powerful message to your subconscious: my peace is negotiable. And over time, this inner message becomes a lived reality. You stop expecting peace. You begin to tolerate chaos. You normalize anxiety. You adjust to being overlooked. And one day, you wake up and realize you've abandoned yourself trying to stay connected to what you were never meant to hold. But here's the beautiful thing. The moment you decide your peace matters more than someone else's comfort, things begin to shift. That doesn't mean you don't love. That doesn't mean you don't care. It means you refuse to betray yourself for the sake of maintaining a false sense of harmony. In Louise Hay's work, there is a deep emphasis on self-respect, on affirming your value in the choices you make. When you walk away from what drains you, you are affirming, "I deserve ease. I deserve emotional safety. I deserve relationships that nourish, not deplete." This idea is mirrored in psychology too. Studies on boundaries and emotional well-being show that people who can separate themselves from toxic or consistently one-sided dynamics experience not only less stress, but greater clarity, higher self-esteem, and stronger relationships elsewhere. Why? Because your nervous system begins to realize it is no longer in survival mode. You are not living defensively. You are not bracing for conflict. You are choosing peace not just as a fleeting feeling, but as a lifestyle. This takes practice. You will second guess yourself. You will wonder if you're being too sensitive, too cold, too quick. But in those moments, come back to this question: does this relationship, this environment, this pattern help me grow, or does it cost me my peace? And if the cost is too high, you already know the answer. There's a quiet kind of grace in letting go. You don't have to fight, explain, or beg for understanding. You simply step back and say, "I choose me now." And in doing so, you create space for what truly belongs in your life, not just what you've tolerated out of habit or fear. Because peace isn't something you stumble into. It's something you protect, something you choose again and again, even if it means walking away from what you once thought you needed. And the moment you do, something extraordinary happens. You no longer just act as if nothing bothers you. You become someone who is truly, deeply undisturbed, because you've built a life that no longer invites the chaos in.